As John said, I was blessed with starting a company from scratch, and actually we're a lot larger than 2,000 now. We're actually 9,000 globally. And what Jerry said, I had absolutely nothing to do with it. I just showed up, and I have no idea why God blessed this company other than we blessed others with shares and things like that. So my life changed very quickly when I went to Haiti in 2012, 2 years after the earthquake, and I'd already read the book Halftime, Success to Significance. So I left my job day-to-day of running this company, and I decided to dedicate my time, talent, and treasure to being the underserved, marginalized. And so for the last 10 years, I've been involved in impact investing full-time. That's what I do with my son. We also have a granting arm as well. And that's money that we receive from we've sold it a few times. We sell a little bit and sell a little bit. I'm still involved with it, but God has blessed us. So today we have investments in 140 investments today in 80 different companies. We do it full time. We take it very seriously. And I had no idea what I was doing 10 years ago when I started. Did I just put that away? So what I'm hoping during my 10 minutes is we're at the tip of the spear in this room. Anybody could be up here speaking, so I'm almost embarrassed because many of you know everything as much as I do. So I'm just going to share from my viewpoint. I don't think I have all the answers. In fact, I know I don't. But we need you to join us. Now, there's people in the room every time I speak, and they'll say, why can't we solve this problem with nonprofit dollars? Well, if you look at this slide, you'll see a little green square there, and that stands for $485 billion that have been donated for charitable causes. And that's a really great number. The problem is it's been about the same for 40 years. It's 2% of GDP, goes up a couple of percent one year. David would know this. Anybody in the nonprofit space would know this. And we have 1.5 million people trying to get money from a square that's not getting bigger. The rest of that gray area, I think Rachel may comment on this as well, is investable assets across the world. This one's the United States. It's either 20 trillion or it's 200 trillion. It's a lot of money. And so here's two facts you may want to remember. Number one, from 1970 to 2020, there were only 144 nonprofits that got larger than $50 million. At the same time, there were 46,136 companies that built a for-profit company greater than $50 million. There is nothing to debate in this room that we cannot solve our social problems with grant dollars. Now, we love grant dollars. You can't take them down. They make a major contribution. But if we're going to solve the global issues, we have to use capital from the marketplace. Second quote is from UN Sustainable Development Goals, talks about poverty, food, water. They estimate that we will need $4 trillion the next 15 years. So if we assume that to be the case, we were blessed with what they call a wealth event. We didn't even know what that was, but one day we had money in our bank that we didn't have in the day before. And it wasn't a pleasant experience. It was a burden to us. We were very uncomfortable with it. And we sat down and said, what are we supposed to do? Let's look at the Bible. What do they tell you to do when you have resources? And we'll get lots of problems because we have parable of talents, which you built a company on, and I'm going to have a different opinion here in a second. And then and they say, of course, double your talents, do everything possible. And then we have over here with Luke saying, sell all your possessions and give it away. And then in Acts, they're sharing everything. And if you didn't share it, they killed the God. Wife didn't even know. She comes a little late and she's dead. So we don't want to die. So in our case, my wife went back and got a degree, her master's in biblical studies. So I am not a theologian. I'm a Christian businessman trying to apply biblical principles in stewarding God's resources. So there may be some theologians in the room. These are theologians I talk to. And so we take the parable of talents is the toughest one. We all know it doubles. We all know we got it. But we don't see it quite that way after talking to theologians. And we see it more as the master was upset because the one who buried his talents didn't even get bank interest. He said, I would have been even happy if you had got me bank interest, which is the lowest possible return. The other two, of course, he acknowledged they doubled their returns. Great job. But we interpret this not as just a financial return, but at a risk reward. What did you do for the kingdom, for the master? Did you risk my capital? He never said he'd be more happy with 3 times. He left that to our imagination. So we, after interpreting it with theologians and pastors, is we see this as God's resources, and we're directed to take risk with his resources. They're not our resources. So we do take risk. And so from this in our family, we decided that we're going to give money away. We're also going to invest money through what we call faith-driven investing. When we first started, I was on the impact side, which to me is a secular term. And so that was social and financial. I just got out of my business day to day. Literally the next day, I Google some people, and that Monday, I'm working. And I want to deploy some capital. Oops, we'll go back to this. And so we had done some investments the first couple of years and talked about the fingerprints of God. Some of you know Pete Oakes in this room. I'm doing social investing. I'm excited about it, trying to change the world. And I sit next to Pete Oakes at a dinner, and Pete's doing faith with it. I'm going, what do you mean you can do faith with it? I didn't even know that there was this, well, we hadn't really started the movement. And so that really changed the way we invested. And so when we graphed our first investments, you can't see along the bottom, but that's a financial return on the X and social and spiritual on the Y. So the perfect winning quadrant is up in that right corner. That's how every 2x2 works. And we started graphing our investments, and we see up in the top left that we have investments in areas that have low financial returns, but they could have gone to the right and say, how did that happen? So we labeled these and talked about it for hours. And one is buried talents. Obviously, no one wants to ever be in that quadrant. The next one is where all the capital is in the world. Today, everywhere across the world, somebody's trying to make more money, grow the IRR. They could care less about Christians for sure. And that's where all the capital is in the world. And then there's some minor amount of money in that top quadrant called maximizing talent. And there's almost zero money in that upper left-hand quadrant. And what we found is the only time you're in that upper left-hand quadrant is when the Spirit is moving you. The Holy Spirit's doing it, because you can't justify it financially. You wouldn't be in that left quadrant. That's low returns. And so in our family, we started noticing that we were driven by those investments. And the ones we talked to our friends about were always the upper left, Spirit-led investments. The one that are, and I'll explain here in a second, they're with the marginalized. So on the right-hand side, I'd like all the Christians in this room, which are all, you're down 99% of your portfolio is probably in that capitalistic bucket. And we have a lot of money there yet as well. We're moving it to try to go up to the maximizing talent quadrant. There are funds. There's 75 funds, according to Henry Kasner. And what you'll see the difference when we invest on the right-hand side, this is good. You want to be there. They're looking for scale. On the left-hand side, those same people are looking for sustainability, just trying to stay alive. On the right-hand side, you're going to see return on investments driving those, because you all put money in, you want them to maximize plus social and spiritual returns. On the left-hand side, they're just looking for human flourishing. On the right-hand side, they have abundant opportunities for job because they're mainly in the United States. On the left-hand side, we're hiring the marginalized, the underserved, the returning citizens, people that are hard to find. And on the right-hand side, they're in established markets, and the left, they're in developing markets. So in our case, our family has decided we want half of our investments in Spirit-led quadrants and half of them in the maximizing talents. So Talanton in our model, which has a lot of subjectivity to it, is not at that midpoint. It's just to the left. I was going to show you all of our investments because we have dots all over the place, and they're all 50-50 now. Talanton is right about to the left of focus, about human flourishing. We're going to do great, and we couldn't be doing a better job with the spiritual and the social component. Here's where, and I have a couple more slides and I'm done. Here's where it gets challenging. To be a redemptive investor, you have to, I sacrifice, we win, which goes against everything we've been trained. It's win-win since we've been young kids, right? And it's easy to get Christians to go from that capitalistic straight up for the exact same return, for the exact same everything, I'm willing to do it. The second you start to go to the left a little bit, that's when they start to get squirmish. They start to say, geez, that parable of talents, I'm supposed to double everything, and you're asking me to take less return. That's really hard. And so what I would tell you is GIN stands for Global Impact Investing Network, collects data on impact investing, and 33% of the secular world said they would take lower returns all the way down to return of capital for a cause they believed in. Faith-driven, 17%. So our faith-filled people, where's Kathy? Somewhere we were talking about, it's one of my facts for you. Faith-filled people are less, and I don't know where Don Simmons, I know he's here somewhere because I got a slide on him, but Don Simmons will support this as well. The further you go left, Christians run. And I feel terrible to say that to a group of Christian people that are you're in the left quadrant here. but we need you to evangelize from this conference to others, and you're going to find them very uncomfortable in that space. And I would tell you now, after doing this for about 8 years, it is rewarding. It's not sacrificial for us to go to that upper left-hand quadrant. We seek it, we desire it, we get motivated by Contegra, we get motivated by Masaka Creamery, we get motivated by Verdant, which some of you know, we get motivated by Talanton. When we're in the field, it makes all the difference in the world. And the return, that's up to God. At the end of the day, people say, what kind of return are you looking for? We don't have a number on it. We just say, Lord, these are your resources. Our whole life changed when we said, Lord, help us to understand that these are your resources, because we used to be 90-10. And then when you have a wealth event, 90-10 is nothing. And we said, we can't live like that. There's no sacrificial giving here. And so we changed on that moment to say, these are his resources. And it took us years. So a lot of you are way ahead of us, because 15 years ago, I said 90-10. That's the gig I got going. But after that, we now are 100%. So that means every dollar are God's dollars. And so that means when you go to invest, risk isn't nearly as important, because we don't believe Jesus come back and say, you took too much risk there, or not enough risk, and you were in Silicon Valley. I think I'll comment on that one more slide. This is the slide I want Don Simmons to see, because this is hard as a Christian, but he wrote a book you should all read, The Servant Leader, Steward Investor, terrific guy, you'll see him speak. And it says, it's easier to pry a steak bone from a hungry pit bull's mouth than it is to persuade a wealthy Christian to invest resources for God's purposes. And that's really harsh. That's really harsh, but it's true. We would say, I'd rather make a pitch to a secular person, because when they're really positive about the experience, the cash is not as important in returns. In our case, we start with spiritual return first. Second, we start with social, and third is financial. And then we trust the Lord. And this one here, I have this fear that one day I'm going to wake up and there's an email that says, from God to Greg, what did you do with the resources I've entrusted you? See you in a couple months or years, eternity. You got to remember, his timeline is not the same as ours. So I know it's coming, and it sits there and says, hey, by the way, let me know how those exits went that I helped you with. You like that? That was good. What did you do with the marginalized? How many poor did you help? How many people did you bring to Christ? And I'm going to sit there and say, well, we gave us a lot of money, and I was in the upper right-hand quadrant, Jesus, the entire time. So I'll close with, Jerry helped us here. I imagine the people on the panel say the same thing. After doing this for 10 years, which I didn't know this 10 years ago, is the number one thing we can do is provide jobs. Jobs. Now, I've been clean water, I get it. Education, I get it. Healthcare, I get it. But when you give a person the dignity of work, everything changes. They don't always want grant dollars. They want jobs. And I was so proud of what Dave was talking about, 100 jobs here, 150 jobs there. We get excited about 10, 20, 30. So the second thing is, the only way we're going to get out, no one's ever served their way out of poverty, or served a community out of poverty. You can look at Haiti for itself, $13 billion they got in grant capital, and it's as big a mess as it's ever been. And then the last one is, we need Christians to lead. So everyone in this room, which is unusual, is already out in front here, because this is early. Our faith-driven investment movement is early. So I thank you for being bold and courageous.